Hello there. Today we'll be doing set matrix zeros. This is our 23rd video. Here is set matrix zero. What we're gonna do is set this particular matrix and set wherever there's a zero. We're gonna set the entire row and column to be zeros. First method you can think of n times n to do it in place is to use like store the row and columns that needs to be changed in a set or like in an array. Just store that particular so there's no change here. This column needs to be changed, so set that to 0. This column does not need to be changed. I set it to 1. You can see it here. So this particular column, the row, no problem. This particular row, yes, and this particular row, no. And basically with that, we go over this once again. Look for every single column that needs to be changed to 0 and change that entire column, and look through entirety of this particular row and change that to 0, and we got ourselves an answer. However, what we want to do is, if we want to do it in place and we can do it in constant time, what we can do is move this particular idea down into this particular location, store it here, and this particular item, this way to store rows, if the rows need to be zeroed out, we store it down here inside the matrix, and then we can store the first row inside a variable of one space. The reason why this works is because by going through the first row already and going from left to right, we can definitely ignore the changes that occur. So let's say we go here and we just change that to 0 and this to 0. That's it. So, and then we will go over this again and check out the first row and the first column and change rows and columns later like this. And that's it. And that's the solution. So let's code it out and do this in O of one space. So first of all, we need our rows and columns. Oops. Then we need our first row, set to false. For R, in range rows. For C, in range columns. Matrix, if matrix R and C is equal to 0, that means that we need to set the columns and the row to 0. So let's look at all the columns. So all the columns will be 0 and columns. The first row will be columns, and we will also set rows now. If R is equal to 0, if it's the first row that needs to be set to 0, then we set the first row to be true. Else we set matrix of that particular row and the 0th column to be equal to 0. So once we're done with that, we can go through all the items that does not impact our first row and first column, because that is where our bread and butter is. That's where our data is stored. So we got to store that for later. If we were not storing it, then we would be fine. Like, we would not need to, move this data around. So now we just set a row and column equals 0. So this sets the row, or the matrix at the 0th column is equal to 0. Then we set the matrix at that particular location to 0. Now let's get through each particular column first. The reason why I want to go through every column first rather than the row is because if we go through the row and we just change the entire column, that would not be fun. what if the column changes the entire row, right? What about that issue? Well, yeah, that could be a problem as well. So that's why we've taken care of that already, and we're just doing the first column and the first row. So yeah, that's why the rows don't matter anymore. So we can do this either way now. So if first row is equal to true, then we can set the first column, but we don't want to set that first because we are storing that one variable here currently, so we want to set this one first before we set the other ones, because this is where our bread and butter is, our data. We don't want to mess up that data first. So we're going to look at each particular row because we're looking at this particular column. We're looking at this first column and changing every row to 0 to get the entire column to be 0. And in this case, for the first row, we need to look at every column and change for that particular row 0 and set it to the 0. And with that, we have completed the problem. Let's run the code. Is there a problem there? False. Let's run the code. And we have a success, and looks like it's going to be good. And oh, nice. Very good solution. Yeah. So that's the interesting thing about this problem, is that we learned that we don't always have to use a set to store our data points and yeah, another way is to use an array and store the data there so that we can reuse this portion of the matrix so we can save space. And of course this requires us to try to remember not to overwrite any data before it's done here. With that, I think we have finished the problem. If you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe. Want more videos, check the link in the description below. And that is all. Have a good one. I'll see you in the next one.